we see an apartment in Paris where a sniper named Max had been waiting for his target for several days. Max was keeping an eye on the hotel in front of him through his scope because his target was expected to arrive there. Since he had been in this flat for days, he started getting bored. To overcome this boredom, Max listened to music and exercised whenever he had time. In the evening, Max came down from the building and bought food for himself from a nearby restaurant. After this, he called his senior and informed him that he would wait for his target for a few more days. As soon as the conversation ended, he broke his phone and disposed of it to avoid being tracked. After returning to his flat, he continued observing every movement around him. Suddenly, he heard a noise outside the gate and suspected that someone might be trying to enter. He immediately got ready with his rifle, prepared to eliminate the intruder. However, it was just a postman who quietly threw a stack of letters inside and left. Max then returned to his position. Max continued waiting for his target, but even after several hours, there was no sign of him. Frustrated, he decided to rest for a while. After sleeping for a few hours, alarm rang and he woke up. His eyes immediately went to the building in front of him, where he finally spotted his target. Without wasting any time, he assembled his rifle, adjusted the height of the table, and took aim. As Max focused on his target, he noticed that a woman was also in the room, entertaining him. However, he paid little attention to her and concentrated on his target. After carefully adjusting his aim, he finally got the perfect shot. But just as he pulled the trigger, the woman unexpectedly stepped in front of the target. The shot missed, and the guards in the building instantly became alert, shutting all the windows. Realizing the gravity of his mistake, Max quickly packed his equipment, got on a scooter, and fled the scene. As he rode through the city, he discarded his belongings at different locations to avoid being tracked. A while later, he stopped at a public restroom and cleaned himself thoroughly before moving on. After this, Max shaved, changed his clothes, and stepped out. He then booked a taxi and quickly headed to the airport. However, before entering, he disposed of all his luggage and a pistol in a dustbin. Inside the airport, he noticed several policemen near the check-in counter. Seeing this, he discreetly stepped out of the foreign departure line and went to the airport restroom to clean himself again. Just then, Max's boss called, and he explained the entire situation. His boss informed him that their client was furious because he had failed to eliminate the target. Due to Max's mistake, the target had now tightened his security, making it nearly impossible to kill him. Hearing this, Max felt tense for a moment but quickly regained his composure. As soon as the call ended, he broke his phone and discarded it. He then boarded a flight to Dominica and left for his home. During the flight, Max noticed a man staring at him. A feeling of unease crept in, and he suspected that the man might be a hitman assigned to eliminate him. As soon as the plane landed, Max checked into a hotel and set up a trap at his room's door to detect any intruders. Then he picked up a knife from the table and sat on a nearby sofa, waiting. However, even after staying alert the whole night, no one came. Eventually, he realized that he might have been overthinking the situation. After this, Max left the hotel and headed toward his safe house, located on a secluded seashore far from the city. However, as soon as he arrived, he noticed several burnt cigarette butts and shoe prints near the main gate. Max immediately realized that someone had been there searching for him while he was away. Sensing danger, Max drew his gun and cautiously entered the house. Inside, he found the place completely ransacked, with bloodstains scattered across the floor. His heart sank as he remembered that he had left his girlfriend there. Before he could process what had happened, his phone rang. It was then that he learned his girlfriend had been admitted to the hospital. Without wasting a moment, Max rushed to the hospital, where he met her brother. The man recounted everything his sister had told him. He explained that two attackers had barged into the house. One was a strong-built man, and the other was a white-haired woman. Their intent wasn't robbery, as they began beating his sister the moment they entered. When they saw that she was on the verge of death, they left her behind and escaped in a green taxi. When Max's girlfriend regained consciousness, she told him that the attackers were looking for him. But despite the torture, she hadn't revealed anything. Hearing this, Max was overwhelmed with guilt, realizing that she had suffered because of him. Determined to take revenge, Max promised his girlfriend that he would track down and kill those responsible. That night, he returned to his house, went to his garden, and dug up a large buried box. Inside the box were all the essentials Max used for his missions: several pistols, passports from different countries, a large sum of money, and some satellite phones. He took everything out, packed them into a suitcase, and set off on his next mission. After thorough investigation, Max tracked down the cab company that owned the green taxi. His research revealed that these taxis were booked through an app before the ride. That night, he infiltrated the company's office and accessed their database to find out who had been driving the taxi that went to his house that day. After searching extensively, he finally discovered the name and address of the driver and booked a ride with him for the following day. The next day we see the driver, Leo, arrive at Max's location, unaware of who his passenger really was. As planned, Max got into the taxi, and Leo began driving out of the city. However, midway through the journey, Max suddenly pulled out his gun and aimed it at Leo, demanding information about the two people who had taken his taxi that day. Terrified, Leo immediately started talking. He revealed that both the man and woman were armed and that he had picked them up from a private airport. Afterward, he had driven them to a secluded villa outside the city, where they instructed him to wait in the car. When they returned a short while later, their clothes were covered in blood. After that, I dropped them off at the airport and drove away. Hearing this, Max immediately realized that the mastermind behind everything was none other than his boss, Hodges. Since Max had failed his previous mission, Hodges had sent 2 of his men to kill him. But when they couldn't find him at home, they brutally attacked his girlfriend instead. Determined to take revenge, Max headed to New Orleans, where Hodges lived. Upon arriving, he rented a van and changed its license plate to avoid detection. The next morning, disguised as a cleaner, Max positioned himself outside Hodges' office, waiting for the right opportunity. After a while, he noticed a courier company's vehicle arriving. Seizing the moment, he slipped into the building by following the delivery boy inside. Once inside, he encountered a woman named Dolores, who immediately panicked upon seeing him. Following his instructions, she took him to Hodges' office. On Max's command, Dolores tied Hodges to a chair, after which Max locked her in the washroom. Facing Hodges, Max demanded to know who had sent the attackers to his house. Hodges admitted that after you failed the mission, the client became furious and ordered a hit on him to ensure the matter was permanently buried. Max then demanded the name of the client, but Hodges refused to reveal anything. Enraged, Max shot him in the chest with a nail gun, killing him instantly. He then stuffed Hodges' body into a trash can before returning to Dolores. Dolores, realizing she had no other option, made a deal with Max. She would provide him with the names and addresses of the attackers in exchange for her freedom. Max agreed. After sneaking out of the building with Hodges' body, Dolores led Max to her house, where he finally uncovered the identities of the 2 people who had attacked his girlfriend. Along with this, he also learned the name of the client who had ordered the assassination of the original target. As Max and Dolores walked toward the stairs, Max suddenly snapped her neck, killing her instantly. With his work done, he left the house and drove to a deserted location outside the city. There, he disposed of Hodges' body, thoroughly cleaned his van, and changed its number plate once again. After covering his tracks, Max traveled to Florida, where his next target, Brute, was located. Brute was one of the 2 attackers who had gone to Max's house to kill him. Max spent the entire day observing Brute's routine and activities. He noticed that Brute was constantly surrounded by people during the day, but at night, he was alone with his dog. Using this information, Max devised a plan. He went to a supermarket and purchased a box of meat along with some sleeping pills. His plan was simple. He would lace the meat with sleeping pills and feed it to the dog. Once the dog was unconscious, he would slip into the house and eliminate Brute. That night, Max reached Brute's house and fed the drugged meat to the dog. Within minutes, the dog collapsed into a deep sleep, allowing Max to break in undetected. Max quietly searched the house for Brute, but before he could find him, Brute suddenly ambushed him. As it turned out, Brute had already suspected that someone had been following him for the past few days. Anticipating an attack, he had prepared himself for this moment. A brutal fight broke out between them. Brute quickly overpowered Max and beat him badly. However, Max refused to go down easily and fought back with equal ferocity, inflicting serious injuries on Brute. During the fight, Brute managed to grab a gun and started firing at Max. He quickly took cover and ran into another room. Before Brute could shoot him again, Max fired several bullets through the door, hitting Brute multiple times. Severely wounded, Brute staggered into the bathroom, trying to save himself. Wasting no time, Max followed him and finished the job with a precise headshot. The sound of gunfire startled Brute's dog, who woke up and started chasing Max. However, Max managed to escape just in time, locking the dog inside the house. To erase any evidence, he set the house on fire before leaving. With Brute dead, Max's next target was the white-haired woman, nicknamed the Expert, who was in New York. He immediately traveled there, checked into a hotel, and cleaned himself up before beginning his search. After several days of tracking, Max finally located the Expert and started following her. At a red light, their cars ended up facing each other, giving Max the perfect opportunity to kill her. However, he held back. He wanted answers first. A short while later, the Expert entered a restaurant, and Max followed her inside. He approached her table and pointed his gun at her. Seeing him, her face went pale. She immediately understood that Brute was dead and that she was next. Trying to remain composed, the Expert offered Max a drink and invited him to eat with her. But Max remained silent, ignoring the gesture. Finally, the expert spoke. She admitted, "We never wanted to kill you, but since you missed your target, the client put out a contract on your head." At this point, the expert said, "I know you're going to kill me, but I have one request. Do it somewhere peaceful." Max agreed for this, and both of them left the restaurant. As they walked, the expert suddenly slipped and tumbled down the stairs. She reached out for help, but without hesitation, Max shot her in the head, killing her instantly. Max did this because he had noticed that the expert was hiding a knife in her other hand. Had he tried to help her, she would have used the opportunity to kill him instead. During his conversation with the expert, Max had learned about the man who had ordered the contract to kill him. His name was Henderson, a powerful businessman currently in Chicago. After arriving in Chicago, Max began tracking Henderson and studying his daily routine. He discovered that to access the penthouse where Henderson lived, he needed a special key. Before making his move, Max took a photo of the lock on the penthouse door and ordered fake key-making machine. He then followed Henderson to the gym where he regularly worked out. To get closer to his target, Max signed up for a gym membership. When Henderson left his belongings in the locker and went to exercise, Max discreetly took his wallet and used a key-making machine to create a replica of his penthouse key. That night, Max infiltrated Henderson's apartment using the fake key. Upon seeing Max in his home, Henderson mistook him for a thief and nervously said, "I don't have anything to give you right now." Max remained silent. Without another word, he gave Hodge's card to him. After seeing the card, Henderson asked Max if he was the same person who had missed his target that day. Max replied, "Yes." Hearing this, Henderson finally confessed. He admitted, "I had hired Hodges to eliminate one of my rivals. Since it was my first time arranging something like this, I had no idea how things worked. But when you missed your target that day, Hodges immediately called me and informed me of the failure. I panicked because I knew my rival would try to find out who was behind the attack. During this time, Hodges started blackmailing me, saying that if I wanted all evidence erased, I needed to pay him more money. Terrified, I agreed and paid him extra. In the process of covering up everything, perhaps he also tried to eliminate you." After hearing this, Max realized that Henderson had no direct involvement in the attack on his girlfriend. Deciding to spare him, Max issued a final warning. "It's very easy for me to reach you. If you ever try to track me down or harm my family, I will return, and you won't get another chance." With that, Max left. He then returned to Dominica and discharged his girlfriend from the hospital, taking her home. Having avenged what had happened, Max finally chose to retire from his dangerous life and started living peacefully with her. With this, the movie ends.